Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy, a revolution in healing from organic intelligence, trauma, and addiction treatment will never be the same. No other than Mr. Steven Hoskinson.
Hey, Daniel.
Hello, Mr. Steven, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, those are all the highlights for sure. It's such a pleasure to be able to spend time with you. And, you have quite a reputation for working at some depth with your guests, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. I teach and train in this post trauma world. And that's the big news, actually, because I used to train in the trauma world. I trained therapists and trauma therapists around the world, and in the process discovered that there is a new and different way, a safer and I believe more wholesome way of working with trauma.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Steven. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today let's talk about what is a post trauma growth. So
Post,
tell us.
yeah, thank you so much. Post trauma growth, it really leans on these two concepts. One is post trauma and one is growth. And to start with growth first, we say that our biology was not made to be fearful and in fight and flight and freeze. Our biology was made to grow and develop and expand into relationship, expand into territories, expand into connection and community, and expand into love. And so that growth is what we believe is really essential to our nature. The post trauma side of that is that since I have been training psychotherapists for almost 30 years now, I began to consider that this somatic approach that I was teaching in began to look like many of the other approaches. That is, they're called these days these exposure methods. And to work with trauma, the big question is, well, how do you work with trauma? And everybody presumes then that you have to talk about it because they think trauma is a memory, or they think trauma is a psychological condition, or trauma is a diagnosis. But it's not. Trauma is actually the effect in our neurobiology, and it is states that are emerging in the moment repeatedly over and over again. It's those states that are physiological states. And so trauma is not primarily psychological, but it is biological and organic intelligence. We say that we have discovered that the way to best work with trauma is to understand the biology. And we've discovered that the biology actually wants to begin to grow through positive recall and positive recollection and positive states. And this is just miraculous. This is just it was as big a surprise to me as it probably is to your listeners right now.
Hmm, definitely. So, Mr. Steve, beyond what doesn't kill you, the phrase "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger" can feel dismissive to those suffering. How does PTG provide more nuanced and scientifically grounded understanding of how suffering can lead to a passive change without minimizing the pain?
Oh, that is brilliant, brilliantly placed. Thank you so much. The what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, of course, is a certainty, and we also believe that healing doesn't require that negative exposure to heal. Let me tell you a story. I was working with a client who was describing being in an earthquake. They'd also been in a tornado and a few other things. but she was describing this earthquake, and then we went on to talk, and then we were talking more about her life in Pleasanton, a town near here, and being with her kids, and just she was so moved because this was the beginning of an era of positive growth for her. And she said, you'd be on the phone, and the train would be going by and be going by nearby, and you say, wait a minute, the train's going by. She said the whole house would shake, right? And what she was doing was she was describing all of the retrieval cues that were related to the earlier recall of the earthquake, but now in a completely positively recollected form. Her kids were there, she was at home, it was Pleasanton, the whole house was shaking, but it was my train. In other words, trauma is meant to be re re-educating us by bringing us into accelerated states, heightened states of goodness, of celebration, of kindness. And so that is the way we work, and we will work in a very unusual way this day and age, which is we just start the conversation with everyday conversation, just whatever comes to mind. And the reason for that is because the biology will then express itself as it wants to. As soon as the trauma therapist says, well, what do you want to work on today? Or what was your trauma? Or let's look at the origins of this. And do you have the courage really to face this? And as soon as the therapist says this, the therapist is leading the client to then the associations that don't feel well and that begin to evoke for the client states that are unpleasant and we believe unnecessary for healing.
Mr. Steve, researchers often talk about five key areas of growth: personal strength, new possibilities, relating to others, appreciation of life, and spiritual change. Which of these do you find is the most often the first to emerge, acting as a catalyst for the others?
Wow, I really believe they fit all together like a puzzle. Like all five of those pieces fit together like a puzzle, and they feed each other. There is this notion of agency in particular, like feeling like I can make a difference in the world. But if it's just that making a difference in the world, then we would be, egomaniacs. Oh, I want to do these things to make a difference, and it's all about me. And so we need the spiritual aspect to bring us back into connection with the reality that we are all, the same beings all together, that we all matter equally, and that our compassion then really needs to be for everyone. So I think all of those pieces, all of those puzzle pieces fit together really nicely, and I really appreciate you highlighting them actually for us. That's brilliant.
So, Mr. Steve, how do you define a post traumatic growth? And how is it fundamentally different from the concept of resilience?
Yeah, yeah. Post traumatic growth is exactly the term that is used in positive psychology, and it generally refers to when people have a traumatic event and then it stimulates them to be more in touch or stronger, you might say. For instance, one of the classic examples of this is the near death experience. Sometimes people have a near death experience and it's transformative for them. They gain a sense of purpose and a sense of what's of value and what's really meaningful. And so that's an example of post traumatic growth, which we really appreciate. In organic intelligence, we talk about post trauma growth because we are on a daily basis really sitting with somebody and helping their biology create the conditions of their own excellence and of their own integrated well-being. That is, we don't think it is necessary to have a traumatic experience. And that's why we call it post-trauma, because we want to consider a post-trauma world and a post-trauma treatment that doesn't ask a person to suffer in order to be enlightened, or it doesn't ask them to suffer in order to grow. And that's post-trauma growth. Resilience, for instance, in the post-traumatic growth uh, area, would mean, again, the ability to bounce back. So something bad happens and then we bounce back. In organic intelligence, we talk about prosilience. That is, when the biology is really organizing itself, it is getting ready. Science is really clear, and brain science is really clear on this very interesting fact, which is the brain isn't primarily for helping us bounce back, or it isn't primarily for getting us back into balance. The brain is the predicting brain. And the brain is thus looking out into the environment and creating a model and a prediction of what's coming, and then getting us ready proactively. And so we would think about prosilience as a proactive getting ready, and that would add to one's resilience for sure.
Is PTG an automatic outcome of trauma, or are there specific conditions like mindset or support that must be placed for growth to be possible, Mr. Steve?
Thank you. Thank you so much for these brilliant questions. Um, Post trauma growth is not inevitable. And this is why we think of post trauma growth, because we would like to reduce the risk of harm, especially the risk of harm by going to therapy. I don't know. I've spent a lot of time in therapy. I used to be very nervous about going into therapy, and dread it a little bit. Like, what are we going to get into today? So I think that post trauma growth for people, and creating a more positive frame for working and growing is really essential. That's our gig here. But it is also the unknown about what is going to predict post-traumatic growth, for instance, because it is so variable. Certainly, mindset helps. Certainly, a sense of confidence helps. Certainly, ego strength. All of those things. But in my experience, it is not necessarily the most skillful person that does the best. Sometimes it's the person that is more desperate. Sometimes it's the person that is really struggling, that is motivated to really do something to make a change, that excels even beyond those who may have greater skills.
Interesting, Mr. Steve. A truly, truly empowering answer. After trauma, people often get stuck in repetitive, negative rumination. What is the critical difference between this destructive rumination and constructive, deliberate rumination that actually fuels PTG?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I what we're discovering, what we're finding is that the negative rumination is not actually that helpful in any of the situations, because we're in a post-trauma growth mode. We find that just a free association conversation, a conversation about everyday topics, is often the most helpful, and because what we are looking for as post trauma growth coaches is we are looking for the signs from everyone's biology, the signs that that biology is sending, these often unconscious signals of growth, of support, of positive experience, of goodness. And those messages are being lost in the river of negative rumination, because one, there's what's called the negativity bias. Humans are inclined to just pay more attention to what the problem is, what the challenge is, what's wrong, and that has our attention hijacked, and onto the river of problems that are around. The second issue is that that attitude is amplified in our current psychology. It was Freud 100 years ago who said we've got to uncover where the unconscious is. Let consciousness be. Let's uncover what's in the repository of the unconscious, which are all of things that we don't want to face anyway, according to Freud. But that view of the unconscious is that the unconscious is what's called the cellar in which the mind keeps its bastard spawn, right? Like our unconscious is the zombie house or something. It's not true. It's not the way it is. Our being has every bit as much expression of goodness and kindness and generosity and luminosity, every bit as much of that as anything else. And so, if we will but turn our attention toward those things, then in a normal, like free association conversation, then there will be signs from the biology itself, these signals that suggest tiny moments of states that are helpful and organizing to the biology. So, as an example,
Go ahead, Mr. Steve.
I'm with you. And one of like you're talking to somebody and they say, well, I was really thinking about post-trauma growth the other day and I couldn't think of any examples of it. And what they have just done and what I'm doing right now is my right hand has come up and is just sort of cupping the side of my face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that unconscious gesture that is one little signal among a myriad of signals that are coming through that are those kinds of balancing impulses that arise from our own unconscious experience. And by making them conscious a little bit more, we are receiving the support that is coming for us all the time.
So, Mr. Steve, many describe as post trauma growth not as a bouncing back to who they were, but it's rebuilding themselves differently, like a shattered vase reassembled into a mosaic. What is the loss in that process and what is gained?
Mm, mm. I think that the I'm not sure how much is lost. In the
Mm-hmm.
end, the gain is a new self, a new identity, and perhaps even the recognition that that change and movement of identity is more interesting than a fixed vase of identity. Like if we always think that we are this one thing, it's just this one fixed vase, then life will show us sooner or later that everything is going to be changing. And in fact, that, we can many moments fall apart and then come back together and fall apart and come back together again. And that movement of say expansion and contraction or falling apart and falling back together, that is really the nature of life and the rhythm of life as well. Like we are one person as we are waking, and then we go to sleep, and then we are other people, and then we wake to someone else, and then we sleep again. These rhythms are the rhythms of our biology, but they're also the rhythm of the formation and the reformation of identity. So it's quite nice not to be too attached to a given identity because it's going to change.
Mr. Steve, as you healing from organic intelligence and trauma and addiction treatment for revolutionizing these breakthrough, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
My short term goals are to live well with my partner in nature,
Mm-hmm.
and to enjoy our marriage and our relationship, and to celebrate friendship and connection. Long-term goals would be to share more about organic intelligence so that we believe that it will have a much more positive effect in the world. There is the whatever we've been doing to this point hasn't moved the dial on more human and compassionate societies. And we are really committed to the members of organic intelligence who come from hundreds of countries around the world. We are committed to them and really care that they live well and that they can share then the goodness that we hope that is the birthright of everyone. That is also organic intelligence.
Yes, indeed, and good luck to your goals, Mr. Steve, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Yes. Well, thank you. First of all, I would say that my main advice is to follow my short term goals, which is to find love and connection and live in connection to nature and celebrate this life that we have while we have it. I think there's that. And it is also very difficult to do that if our own biology is struggling. We say that our biologies are often desynchronized or dysregulated. So life and so many things don't feel well. And so that's why we have organic intelligence coaching to be able to help people feel better by having their biology more functional and resilient and efficient so that they feel then what they know. Most people know life is here to be lived and celebrated, and there is love to be explored, and meaningful activities such as what you're doing right now. And yet, the biology is often holding them back, and they feel it tension or anxiety or fear or panic. And so we believe that by working in our organic intelligence sessions, that people can be freed from that kind of physiological disorganization because our bodies and our biologies want to reorganize themselves, and our coaches know how to help that happen.
Well, thank you for that advice, Mr. Steve. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yes, I've got one here. It is Gregory Bateson's Steps to an Ecology of Mind. Our organic intelligence is a systems concept, and it comes out of complexity science and really leans into the science of emergence. And so, one of the really founders of this kind of systems thinking is Gregory Bateson, and I'm thankful that my one of my mentors, Stephen Gilligan, pointed me in Bateson's direction.
Thank you, Mr. Steve, for sharing that recommended book. And I hope our listener or viewers will read it and for sure they will empower. So, if our culture more widely understood and embraced the concept of PTG, how might it change the way we support people after loss, disaster, or illness?
Yeah, because emerging from loss, or arising like a phoenix out of the ashes, are signals and messages and archetypes of help and love and support and balance and the union of the oscillation of yin and yang. Everything is right there. And so, if we could learn how to support each other and not to deny the pain, but also to see the emerging new identity that is forming there, then we will help each other quite a lot. And we train in that. We train our coaches to do that. And I would welcome any of your listeners to come and train with me.
Yes, definitely. Please do train with Mr. Steve, and you will learn a lot. And please do pass through our generation to our generation to come. So, can you share a story of someone you work with or studied whose journey into post trauma growth was particularly surprising or profound? What it taught you?
Yeah, I think that. I think again, I just mentioned Stephen Gilligan here because Stephen Gilligan was one of the early proteges of Milton Erickson, one of the really the forebears of strategic therapy and also of hypnotherapy in particular. And he described his relationship with Erickson as being really profound. And I found my relationship with Gilligan really profound. Uh, and and it was because Gilligan really said he liked to understand things a lot, and he was really focused on mental or cognitive understanding. Until one day that Erickson pulled him aside and he said, "Your conscious mind is very smart, but your unconscious is so much smarter." Something like that, like the pointing to the deeper resources that are within us that we don't even know that are there. And we gain so much confidence when we discover that these inner resources are reliable and something that we can really lean into and count on. And I'm really grateful for the many teachers that I've had who have pointed me to exactly that kind of mystery so that I can point others with great confidence to the same kind of support that's always on its way.
Yes, definitely. And what does a life look like when it's not defined by a trauma that happened, but deeply enriched by the growth that followed? What is the feeling on at the core of that life?
I think the core of that life is the ability to live simply in the present moment with one's eyes open to all that is around, the people and the nature and just everything that is inside and outside. It's simply being present to here and now with a certain amount of hopefulness and realistic perspective as well. That means compassion and means the impulse to be of support to others who may be feeling less hopeful and less resourced or less resilient.
Compassion indeed. And Mr. Steve, before we wrap up our discussion today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, a movie 101 review, music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in second season, and my baby podcast, Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Steven, for the person listening or watching who is in the depth of their struggle and cannot yet imagine a way or any form of growth, what is your most important message to them?
Yes, it is don't lose hope. Many of us have been where you are, and we have seen no future ahead. And yet, when we least expect it, the sun rises and a new day dawns. So hang on, don't lose hope. The other thing is a very practical skill, and that practical skill is that we would, instead of having people look inside so much, that is to be so introspective, I would also encourage people to spend time bringing the attention out into the environment, to contact the environment through the senses and make a practice of that. And I think that will also provide an oasis in the midst of otherwise what could be a desert of struggle.
A desert of struggles to what? A gulf of a stream. Mr. Steven Hoskinson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite the listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Book 101 Review?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, join us. We're at organicintelligence.org, and we have classes and courses for personal resilience, post trauma growth, to be a post trauma growth coach. and we would celebrate every single person that joins in our community, and you will be cared for and valued deeply. So that's my invitation. And then lastly, thank you. Really, what an amazing set of questions and the research that you did to make this happen. I see why you can do so many podcasts, because really you're so brilliant at seeing these things. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Steven Hoskinson. And yes, people, let's support Mr. Steven, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering breakthrough to come, more and more empowering legacy for our generation to generation to come. So, Mr. Steven, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too. It's a pleasure.
Modicon people, see you soon.